Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Welcome to the third part in our series of how Tesla can reach a $10,000 stock price by 2030. In the previous parts, we established how much gross profit Tesla could make per kilowatt hour from vehicles and energy. In this part, we'll go through how much gross profit Tesla can make from residential consumers for solar and Powerwalls. If you missed the first part of the series, you can click on the link above. Okay, let's get to it. Currently, Tesla simply can't make enough solar to transition the world to renewable energy. So the solar panels they do produce, they sell mainly to residential, as these customers are currently paying the highest per kilowatt hour for power. Therefore, the product has the most value to them, which means they'd be willing to pay more for it, implying these end users would give the highest margin. Let's start with the market potential in the US. There are 130 million households, consuming an average of around 10,000 kilowatt hours a year, or 850 kilowatt hours a month of electricity. The US spends an average of 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So average monthly power bills in US households are 850 kilowatt hours times 30 cents per kilowatt hour, which comes to $110 per month. When you add $110 a month into the Tesla solar panel website, it says $16,400 for solar panels and $17,000 for Powerwalls, or around $33,000 combined. So let's start with solar. With 130 million households spending on average $16,400 on solar, that comes to a total of $2.1 trillion. That is how much revenue Tesla would generate if every household, just in the US, purchased the correct solar for their energy needs today. Of course, the market is global, not just America. However, not every nation has the same amount of energy consumption. So rather than calculating the global market based on the US as a percentage of global population, I think it would be much more accurate to scale it as a percentage of global GDP. The US is approximately 1/4 of global GDP, so that would give us a global market of $8 trillion. This price did also include installation. These solar panels are actually 8 kilowatts of solar, so just out of interest, that equates to a total global household requirement of 4 terawatts of solar panels, which would likely produce around 20 terawatt hours of power on a daily basis. Of course, though, this is just the energy created, not consumed, and as it's solar, it obviously can't be created at night. So in order to balance that out, the Powerwall is required. We saw the average household would require 2 Powerwalls at a total cost of $17,000 installed, according to the Tesla website. And with 130 million households in the US, that comes to a total of $2.2 trillion. That is how much revenue Tesla would generate if every household, just in the US, purchased the accompanying Powerwalls with their solar to keep them self-sufficient today. If we want to scale that number globally, as America's percentage of GDP again, then that would equate to approximately $9 trillion. As each Powerwall has 14.4 kilowatt hours of storage, and Tesla suggests 2 for the average household, that comes to around 30 kilowatt hours per household, meaning a total of all households in the US requiring just over 3.9 billion kilowatt hours of batteries, which is also known as 4 terawatt hours. Scale that up globally, and we're at 16 terawatt hours total. Okay, so those are some numbers that we can use to start with as a base, which is the total potential global market of $17 trillion if Tesla sold solar and Powerwalls to every household in the world. Obviously, this would in no way be the most efficient way to power households. Of course, even if everyone could afford this and wanted it, then Tesla couldn't supply them anyway. But we need to fast forward to 2030. Now, who can say that there won't be some new inventions over the next 10 years of products that are so cool that we just have to have them, even though they may consume a lot more power? I don't know, something like an in-house Android that can do all your cleaning, cooking and washing. Who knows? But let's just stay with our existing appliances for now. But overall, I would expect that households have become more efficient with energy consumption by 2030. For households, over 50% of energy consumption is just for heating and cooling. In addition to that, another 15% is for water heating. We're up to nearly 3/4 of all energy consumption being heating and cooling related. Now, Tesla have developed a heat pump for their vehicles, with, I believe, the help of a few rocket scientists from SpaceX, and they did such a good job, Tesla are going to make heat pumps for buildings too. This will likely be an open patent, implying that other households' utility products could also use the same heat pumps in the likes of washers, dryers, refrigerators, etc., and thus also create more efficient products too. Or alternatively, Tesla could offer all those products too. as it might not be that difficult to design and manufacture. Either way, by 2030, let's assume that with more energy efficient products, households require half as much energy to keep them running. We've been seeing this already with the likes of LED lighting and LED display screens, so I believe this will be a trend we continue to see. So we just cut down the entire household power requirement by half, which makes sense, as this is part of Tesla's mission to transition to renewable energy. It makes it much easier if you need less energy in the first place. Part of the reason people are paying for solar and Powerwalls are to be self-sufficient, as well as possibly saving somewhat on their electricity costs. It is a luxury item. It feels good to be independent, decentralized, and, of course, that little bit more sanctimonious because you're not running your house off fossil fuels. Unlike so many of your unethical neighbours and friends, it's great to have the moral high ground at dinner parties. But prices will come down, and solar Powerwalls will go from becoming luxury items to cost-saving ones, similar to how we're starting to see with Tesla cars. Comparing the original Model S with now a standard Model 3, and with what will also be the eventual $25,000 Tesla, cost of ownership eventually will be lower than the ICE alternative. So if the cost of solar has come down half by 2030, which going by the trajectory of the last 10 years could be considered overly pessimistic even, and households require half as much power, then that will be a significant cost saving. But it wouldn't stop there. The current Powerwalls aren't even using today's 4680 batteries. Currently, Tesla Powerwall supply can't come close to meeting demand, so Tesla can justify high prices. This is of course still back to the cliche of Tesla battery constraint. However, even next year, at the expected 200 gigawatt hour battery supply, selling 200,000 Powerwalls a year is only a few % of this output. So it won't take long until Tesla can start seriously delivering Powerwalls. In 2030, I estimate that Tesla might be at the cost of $30 per kilowatt hour at the cell level for the batteries required for the Powerwall. Now, if we're working under the assumption that household power usage has halved, each US household would only require a 15 kilowatt hour battery. That comes in at a cost of $450 at the cell level. Tesla are currently charging $8,500 for the equivalent today. So let's say if they reduce the price by just half and sell them for $4,000, then that will be a considerable saving. So let's redo these numbers for 2030 with our new demand for energy consumption. And before anyone says, but the population could have risen dramatically by 2030, that's actually not how things are trending. Anyway, the new requirement for US household would now be a 4 kilowatt solar panel, which would cost around $4,000 per household, which is now only $520 billion nationwide and globally $2 trillion. And we said Powerwalls would now be $4,000, also for about 15 kilowatt hours, or again $2 trillion globally. Total global requirements for batteries in Powerwalls would now be about 8 terawatt hours. Currently the Powerwall is only in increments of 14.4 kilowatt hours, but it would be more than likely that this will become more scalable, possibly to the kilowatt hour, as to keep costs down for households that consume much less power, particularly in more developing nations where they don't have the luxuries like air conditioning, washers, dryers, perhaps not even refrigerators, and they don't have requirements for heating, as they are generally in warmer climates. As the batteries wouldn't need to be so big and heavy, then Tesla could get away with LFP batteries, reducing the price significantly. They could make them a lot more basic, to cater for less industrialized and developed nations. The citizens wouldn't care so much about aesthetics, as they would just want to save money. On the other hand, it probably just makes more sense for them to be on the grid, as that will likely be the cheaper option when Tesla feeds into that. So let's say that Tesla are able to sell 5% of global potential on an annual basis. 5% of 8 terawatt hours is 400 gigawatt hours. So going by Tesla's 3 terawatt hour a year of production, this would take around 10% of that supply, and would therefore be very possible with their given targeted battery supply. Placing a 30% margin on the Powerwalls, while selling at a price of $4,000, would equate to $1,200 gross profit, with 7.5 kilowatt hour per battery would mean a gross profit of $160 per kilowatt hour. This would equate to selling 25 million 7.5 kilowatt hour Powerwalls a year, and a total gross profit of $30 billion. And as for solar, I would also like to keep using the 30% margin. I think this is more or less what Tesla are going for, but it's possible they may be up to 40% by this stage too. Anyway, if the global household solar energy requirement is now only 2 terawatts, and Tesla is selling 5% a year, that would equate to 100 gigawatts of solar a year. And if 4 kilowatts cost $4,000, then that would equate to an annual turnover of $100 billion, or again, $30 billion of gross profit. Of course, the profit Tesla make from the Powerwalls is not one-off. Each Powerwall would have the opportunity to join Tesla's virtual power plant, VPP, with AutoBidder, of which Tesla will be able to generate an ongoing income. But we have factored this income in already somewhat in our previous video on how much gross profit Tesla can make on energy storage. So we'll leave that out here, as we don't want to add the same income twice. And yes, there is some commercial use for Powerwalls, for example some accommodation facilities that experience blackouts, or even off the grid. But generally, I think the vast majority of sales will be for residential use, so we'll just stick with that in our analysis. So anyway, I think we'll stick with the $60 billion combined gross profit from Powerwall and solar. And yes, you can buy solar without Powerwall, but I think at this stage it will be a cost-saving exercise, and the two are required to complement each other. Powerwall will also be a prerequisite to being entered into the AutoBidder, which is possibly where the real cost savings occur. In our next video, we'll explore the impact of the heat pump industry will have on Tesla's gross profit, and how that will help Tesla reach their $10 trillion valuation. Thanks for listening, please hit the thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe.